Hi, my name is Samantha. Thanks for joining me today. In today's Remnants to Radiance project, we're going to be making reversible fabric gift bags. These are perfect for any occasion and can be used time and time again. Let's look at the finished bag. So here we have 3 patterns and a different lining. We have a hook for a gift tag and drawstring. Let's see what we need to make it. So what we need is our lining that is 10 inches tall, 8 inches wide. We need 2 pieces of that. Then we need our bottom fabric, which is 8 inches wide, 5 inches tall. We need our mid strip, which is 8 inches wide, 2 inches tall. And then we need our top strip, which is 8 inches wide, 4 inches tall. 4, 2, and 5 do not add up to 10. That is because we need room for seam allowance. If you made this perfectly 10, then you would have to cut your lining down smaller. Then we need a piece for our tab. This is 2 inches wide, 3.5 inches tall. A ring to go on there. If you're using a different ring, your tab measurement will be different. And then we need 2 pieces of cord. You could do just 1 piece and just have it pull off to one side. I like 2 pieces, and for that measurement, we're going to do 3 times the width. So we have 8 inches. 8 times 3 is 24. So I have 2 pieces of 24-inch cord here. And this is actually macrame cord, and it's a very nice weight for this project. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is make our sandwiches. So the lining is just 1 piece on top of the other. So what we're going to do here on the lining is we're going to sew down 3 sides. For the exterior piece, we're going to put the first one face up. And these leaves are directional. So we want it to be stacked in this direction. So is this picture, this fabric is directional as well. So this is in the right order. Then we're gonna just turn it right sides together. And then we're gonna either pin or clip. I like to clip in the middle, on this end over here, and then on this side, pin over more to the left. If you put your pin right here, then you're going to have to move it when you get to the sewing machine. If you put it over here, then your presser foot is not in the way. We're going to do the same thing to the next piece. Upwards, upwards, flip. All right, let's head over to the sewing machine. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and do a straight stitch down this line. No need to back stitch. So now you can see that we have attached this layer. I'm gonna go ahead and do the other piece. Now we need to go over to the iron. All right, we're at the iron and we have 3 different tasks to do. First, we're gonna press up our seam. Then on the next one. Now you could go ahead and do a top stitch to hold this seam up. I'm not too concerned. Next, we need to iron our tab. So what we're going to do with our tab, I'm going to fold it long ways, hot dog style, iron. Now I have the center seam, So now I can fold one half in and the other half in. Some people like to iron each side separately. I like to do them both at the same time so I can ensure that they're lined up properly. See how they just disappear in one another? Now, without burning our fingers, I'm going to iron this down. Yes, I have burned my fingers about 2,000 times doing this. All right. There we go. All right, before we can sew the top piece on, we need to enclose this seam. So what we're going to do is just do a straight stitch, no back stitch. Alright, there's no reason to do this stitch, it was just so I could do it in one continuous line. So your next decision is which panel is your front. So I like to look. Now we have a clear idea of what's showing up. So I like how this one, how you can see more of the tractor. So I'm going to make this be my front. And what I need to do is put my tab. Alright. You could go ahead and baste this with a stitch if you like. What I'm going to do is get this lined up in the corner. I'm using my inch grid. I'm going to do 2.5 inches over, 1 inch up. So that would be right here. And I'm lining up the left side. It's important to make sure this is straight. Sometimes it can go off a little. This one went slightly to the side. So what you can do to prevent that is if you go to the sewing machine right now and do a couple quick stitches, then once we add the next layer, it won't shift. So let's go ahead and go do a couple stitches very carefully. Go slowly, back stitch. All right. I'm just gonna go very slow. And the back stitch. Now we know that this is not going to shift. It's going to stay right there. Let's go finish sandwiching our pieces. The same thing as before. Match it up on top and then lay it downwards. This one doesn't really matter because it's not directional. And this tab is sticking out on purpose. Don't trim it just yet. This piece we have a lot more to work with. So as far as clipping on the left, as I suggested before, further down, it's a lot easier. And then it's going to need a straight stitch down. All right, let's go to the sewing machine. Make sure that your tab is inside. I just moved my clip over so it stabilized the tab. Slow. Backstitch, reinforce. All right, back to the iron. All right, ready? I'm gonna push up the seams again. Look how pretty. Push up the seam. Just be careful around your hardware. All right, and now what we need to do is line these pieces up. So the first step I do is I look at the middle, because when your bag is constructed, you're really going to be able to see if it matched up or not. All right, let's do the other side. It doesn't matter if it was cut wonky or not. As long as the seams match up on the sides, it's going to look good on the end, at the end. All right, so now what we need to do is we need to sew down and back up. Before we sew the outside of the bag, this would be the time to check to see if your bags line up. Ready? All right, my yellow's a little longer, not a big deal. I'm just gonna go ahead, chop that off. Now I have two pieces that are even. Straight stitch with a back stitch. Back stitch is this button right here, or sometimes it's a little lever on the side that reinforces your stitches. If you do not do a back stitch, your stitches will fall out. These stitches here, we did not do a back stitch because we're going to go over them. If you have two stitches that are intersecting, then it's fine. Pivot, leave your needle in the fabric. You can see mine's slightly cut off. I'm just going to keep sewing straight. Pivot. We don't have to worry about hitting the hook because the hook is all the way over here. You could back stitch over the flaps if you'd like. I wouldn't worry about it. Back stitch, cut your thread. Now we have the exterior bag almost done. We just need to box the corners. But this is where you could take a look, rip your seams if you have to. All right, you can see what I mean. See how this is matched up nicely? That's why when you cut this piece, and this piece, do it stacked. So if you're off, it doesn't matter. They're cut exactly the same. So don't cut this piece and then cut this piece, cut them stacked so that you end up with two pieces that are exactly the same and it won't matter. And we have our little tab. All right. So the next step is we're gonna box our corners. In order to get a nice box corner, we need to press the edges of our seams open. So let's go back to the iron. To press open the seams, I'm going to lay my bag down flat. I'm going to open it here. Pressing my seam open. This is going to help the end product look nicer. And up here, it'll help the cording go through better. So now this side of the seams are open. We're going to flip it over and do the same thing. So when we flip it over, the backside seam should be down and these seams will go up. So see how it'll be open? If you have a pressing ham, then you could stick that in here and do this in one swipe, but I don't have that. So this is how we're doing it. Okay, I'm gonna go put some more water in my iron. All right, my iron wasn't getting enough steam, so let's try it now. There we go. Again, we have no concern about the tab because it's way pushed in. So it's not like you're gonna iron over it. Okay, so now to do a box corner, we're gonna need to get some pins. First step to a nice box corner is pinning. So what I'm gonna do, now that the seams are pressed open, I'm just gonna finger press it, try and get them lined up. Then what I'm gonna do is take my pin right through the center of the seam to the other side. See, that's not straight. So I'm gonna go through till I get it in both seams. Sorry, it's hard to do with the camera in my face. Okay, there we go. All right, so see how the pin is on this right through the seam, then on this side right through the seam. So now it's a perfectly straight corner. Now we can pull the pin out. I put it a little further down, and now this is perfectly flat, perfectly straight, which allows for a very nice box corner. See that? Yes, that's what we want. All right, little details like that make it look like you know what you're doing. All right. All right, got that one a little faster. All right, now let's draw our boxes. So we're gonna draw a 1-inch box corner. I have my ruler over here. What I'm gonna do is get one side. I have a friction pen. Friction pens erase with heat. So it'll erase with the heat of the iron. Just buy them at Office Depot. Okay, so see my 1-inch mark right here? I have the corner lined up with it, and I've marked the two sides. Now I'm gonna go across. And that's where we're gonna sew. I put my pin way back here so that the pin can remain while I'm sewing. All right, see what I'm doing? I'm lining up 1 inch, 1 inch. All right, let's go sew that on the sewing machine. We're gonna do a straight stitch. I'm lining up my middle of my presser foot with this line. I'm not gonna do a back stitch. I'm just gonna sew across. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop. Now I can pull my pin out. Now I can lift up my presser foot, flip this guy around, and then sew it again. Flip it. Sew it. I'm just going to do it 4 times. And that's a little easier than trying to do a back stitch. And now this is really reinforced. Okay, let me do the other side. Same exact method. Let me show you what it's like to back stitch. So the problem with back stitching, I have to hold my hand way up here or over here if you had a tab. Watch, it's hard to get it straight. See, it's moving because I can't hold it with my other hand. So that's why I suggest going, oh, here, let me show you. See, look, it went way wonky. I was able to do it for a little bit, but if you just go like this, straight, leave the needle, flip, sew it again, flip, see, that was so much easier. Don't make it harder for yourself. Make it easier. All right, clip these corners. This is the first time I'm clipping or trimming anything. One of my biggest tips, if the seam is on the inside, who gives a crap? Don't cut your threads. Don't waste your time. Just leave it. All right, cut it. Do not cut your thread, or not your threads. Don't cut what you just sewed. All right. There we go. We can cut this tab a little smaller. So look, remember when we basted it? So there's our basting stitch, and then here's the stitch from piecing the 2 pieces together. This tab is not going anywhere. And you might think, oh, why did we use such a big piece of fabric then? Well, it's much easier to work with a bigger piece of fabric than if we were looking, do you really want to work with something that is this tiny? That's going to be really hard. Make it easier for yourself. All right, want to see what it looks like when we turn it inside out? Look at those boxes. So pretty. All right, I'm going to change my thread to white so that I can do the lining. Normally I wouldn't change the thread, but when I did the last one with a dark thread, it just does not look as good. So I'm going to go change to white. All right, we got some white thread now. I'm going to do everything we just did to the exterior to the lining. I'm going to sew around, then I'm going to make the box corners. So then once I do all that, then I'll be back with you. All right, we're back at the iron. As you notice, sewing is a lot of ironing. That's how you make your stuff look professional and not handmade. All right, we're gonna open up these seams. Oh, let's see some magic. Okay, so you see the purple marks? Check this out. Boom, get yourself some friction pins. They're like $5 at Walmart. Awesome. All right. So now we're gonna press this seam open, this one right here, the one that we just chopped. It's a little tricky, but you can do it. I normally don't have this hard of a time ironing, but having the camera right up next to me and trying to maneuver the iron to not be in the way, it's very hard to do both. I cut this one too small. I'm not going to open it. Same thing with that one. I cut them too small. All right. So now, if you lay your two pieces on top of each other, they should line up. If they don't, chop some off the top so that they line up. The next step is to make the two pieces connect. So one needs to be right side out and one needs to be inside out. I'm going to turn this one right side out. So the seams are in the inside. The pretty side is out here. The seams are on the outside. The pretty side is in here. Pretty, pretty. Make the right sides touch. And then now we're going to line up our seams first, which will be easy because they're nice and pressed open. Clip or pin. Go to the other seam. And then now, if you go like this, if you did everything right, it'll match up. Yay! Okay, so here's where to the variation. If you would have left a hole in the bottom of your inside piece, then right now you just sew this whole thing shut. I did not leave a hole. These are two complete pieces. So I need to leave a hole somewhere to turn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a pin instead of a clip so that I remember. And I'm going to do it on the back side. So my tab is right here. I'm going to leave myself about 2 inches. You can measure it if you want or just eyeball it. And this, maybe a little bigger. This is where I'm going to turn the bag inside out. You have to leave yourself an opening, either here or in the lining. If you do it here, it makes it look nicer if the bag is reversible, which is my goal. All right, I still have the white thread in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take off this little container thing, so it's just an arm. I'm going to start at the 1 pin. Look, I'm putting my bag around. See? My bag is around it. Pins are a little easier than clips at this point, at least for my machine. Like, there's not much room down here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is start at the 1 pin, put my needle down. You guessed it, I'm going to do a back stitch. And then I'm going to sew all the way around, and I'm going to back stitch at every seam to reinforce it. You know what I mean? It's getting stuck underneath. I wouldn't suggest turning your bag on the seam. I would suggest doing a back stitch there so it's nice and strong. All right, so now we have an opening, so I can turn the bag right side out. All right, ready to see some magic? Got our hole right here. The smaller the hole, the nicer it'll look at the end, but the harder it is to turn it. Just take your time, pull it through, pull the other side through. Get yourself a super fancy turning stick. I call this a la chopstick. It's a chopstick. All right. So poke out your corners. If you don't poke out your corners now, once we seal that hole, you're never going to be able to poke the corners. Do it now. All right. Look at those box corners. Love it. All right. Okay, so now we have this crazy looking tube thing. You'll never guess what we're gonna do next. We're gonna go to the iron. Our goal here is to make this line right here, the seam, really crisp. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna turn it. This naturally wants to lay flat. This seam wants to lay flat because we already pressed it open. So do it a little cockeyed. Move your hardware out of the way and push towards the lining. Flip her over. Here's our opening. Push towards the lining. Okay, so now stuff the lining inside. You have a couple options here. You could completely sink the lining inside. You could try to make them perfectly even, or you could pull the lining up. It's up to you. I am going to try and make them even. So what I'm going to do with the right side of the bag out, I'm just going to roll this. See, that's pretty tight. And I'm just going to use the tip of my iron. If you had one of those little baby irons or a mini heat press, you could use that. Then we're going to roll. And ironing it before you sew it makes it look nicer. Do this step. All right. Our goal right now is to sew the opening shut. So at the end, we're going to end up with 3 sewing lines. The closure and then the casing. So right now, we're just worried about the closure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start at a seam. Again, the little arm thingy is off. I don't worry about pinning this. It's just me. I'm going to line it up. I like to move my needle over all the way right. The rest of the time, I just had my needle in the center. Okay. We're going to backstitch. And I have my fingers in here, I'm pulling tension. Reinforce the seam. Now something I forgot to do is I normally use a leader piece so that this doesn't happen. See how it's all jumped up? I forgot, but we're going to do it for the next one. All right. Okay. So you could stop right there and you have a bag. It's done. But I want to add some drawstrings. So this is where it's going to vary depending on what it is that you're using for your drawstrings. for the cord I'm using, both of them on top of one another are about 1/4 of an inch. See that? It's 1/4 of an inch. So this casing that I have here is 1/2 an inch. So you want your casing hole to be bigger than what you need for your cords. So how I made it 1/2 an inch without doing any marking, because if you mark it, then how are you going to get the marks off? It's not going to look as nice. And you can more visually tell by the threads anyways. I'm going to use this thread as my measurement. So what I did, so as you can see how this top thread is closer to the sealing thread? So what I did, I loaded my machine. See my stitch right here that I already did? This stitch right here? I have my presser foot lined up to it, and I still have my needle way left adjusted, or sorry, way right adjusted. And that's how I did that. Back stitch. Oh, I forgot to delete a piece again. Man, I'm just so excited to make this bag, I keep forgetting. All right. Okay, so now for the second line, what I'm going to do, match up the presser foot again, but this time I'm going to move my needle way to the left. By doing this, I didn't have to waste my time marking. There's no markings on my bag, which means I don't have to wash it, and it's consistent to the next line, which is visually more appealing. So that's how I do it. Tips and tricks. All right. So the reason why we did so many back stitches on all the seams is because we have to cut it open. That's how we're going to add our drawstring. All right, watch this. Let me just trim my threads real quick. All right, grab yourself a seam ripper. So if your bag is not reversible, then all you need to do is unpick the outside layer. If you want your bag to be reversible, you need to unpick both layers. So it'll be easier for me to show you on this side. All right. See these stitches right here? This is the bottom of our casing. This is the top of our casing. This is sealing it shut. We're only going to pick these threads right here on the front of the bag and on the back of the bag and on both sides. So just stick your seam ripper in and cut them. Okay, look at that. All right, see, look. See? Okay, do it to the side. Okay. So now they're all open. We're gonna go get our cord and put it through. All right, so I have my cord here, 2 pieces. That is 3 times the length, remember? All right, so I have this fancy hook turner. See how it has this little latch? I don't remember how much it is. I think maybe like $5 at Joann's, which you can use a 60% off coupon. Always use coupons, people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the casing, come out the other side. Okay, so now I have it through one side. I'm going to grab one of my threads. I'm going to pull it nice and tight so that it fits in my hook without damaging the threads. And I'm going to manually shut it. So what happens is when you pull this through the fabric, boom, it shuts. So, but I just want to make sure the threads don't get pulled apart. And then what I'm going to do, watch this. Whoosh. Magic. So much easier than a safety pin. Get yourself one of these, Joann's, with a coupon. All right, we're gonna go do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so now we have a cord over here and more cord over here. I'm gonna pull this side a little tighter. And then on this side, I'm gonna go closer to the end. Do the same thing, grab the cord. Okay. Yeet. All right. Look at that. All right, so remember at the beginning I said that you could just do one side if you want? Look, it's gonna shut, okay? It's gonna work. But I want 2 sides. So I'm gonna tie this together. You could use some frayed check at the end if you want. I'm not too concerned. And if you buy a gift bag from me like this and you don't like my thread, change it out. Put some ribbon in. If this breaks, change it out. Put some ribbon in. Put some string in. Put whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Okay, so now we have the cord on this side. So now we need the cord on this side. So if you ever forget which way to do it, look, the cord needs to be on this side. So what we're going to do, same thing. Stick it through, but the opposite direction. And we're just trying to make sure we don't get tangled up in the other string because you don't want to rip apart your strands of your string. Okay. Go closer to the top. Okay. Other side. So remember we talked about the seam laying flat? Sometimes it's helpful to pull your seam closer to you so that the hoop turner, so that it can go past it and then you can come back. Because sometimes the hoop gets stuck in the layers of fabric. Okay. I'm gonna push these out of the way. Go close to the end. The reason I say closer to the end is if you did it right here, then you're gonna rip out your other string because there's not enough. You'll be pulling on the tension. All right. Now, don't get too excited and just tie the string right away. Check. Make sure your drawstring works. Because what happens sometimes with cords, this wouldn't happen if you used ribbon, is these are made up of strands. When I put the loop turner through, if I accidentally went through one of these strings and this string is inside of another string, when you go like this, it's not going to work. So double check it. I can tell it's working, so I'm going to tie it. All right, so there we go. So if you would have left the opening on the bottom, you would have had to seal it and you would have been able to tell. but now it's reversible. So it takes a little bit to reverse it, but all you have to do, so right now the strings are on the inside, so we want them on the outside. So I'm going to use my loop turner again, but this time I'm going to go through the seam. Okay, I'm going to grab my knot, I'm going to grab the knot, and I'm going to pull it through the other side. This might be a little tricky, might take a second, but trust me, you can do it. Or not. All right. I messed up. So in all my test trials, I was using this string, so it was much thinner and I could pull the knot through. I didn't account for the fact that this knot is much bigger. So I don't know if it's gonna work. I might have to go back to my casing design. I mean, the bag functions. It's a good bag. Come on. You could do it. You could do it. All right, I'm gonna have to make the casing bigger. Okay, so what I did was I just added another row of stitches, and I'm gonna have to seam rip all of these out, and that's gonna allow me to have enough space to turn the knot inside out. If you made it this way and you're not worried about turning it inside out, it works just fine. Don't worry about it. Don't do what I'm doing. However, in the future when I do this, what I'm going to do, instead of measuring, I'm going to use washi tape that is the correct width of what I want, and I'm going to lay it down, and then I'm going to sew along this edge, and then I don't have to measure. Okay, so I'm going to seam rip this, and then I'll be back. It's a couple hours later, and I'm back. I've seam ripped the middle seam, and now it actually opens and shuts better, which I didn't even think about maybe being a factor. But now we can turn it inside out. So I have the hole. I can take the knot, shove it through the other side. And you know, sometimes you do just need to take a minute, walk away from a project, rip some seams, say some words, and then just go back to it. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. You may feel like it. You may be angry, but it happens. There we go. Reversible gift bag. One last thing I want to show you before we go is how they look with gift tags. So the reason why I have this so short is experimentation on where the gift tags sit. So these are the acrylic gift tags. They're not available on my Etsy shop just yet. I'm still working on some product renovation. But you can see with the bag shut, it's not touching the ground. First couple bags I made, it was too low. So that's what that looks like. And the great thing about the acrylic ornaments, or sorry, not ornaments, I just gave myself away. The great thing about the acrylic tags is that once you give them to someone, that can continuously be that person's bag, or they can put a ribbon on it and stick it on their tree. This is just a standard paper gift tag, and it just fits nicely in the hole. Again, it's not touching the ground. If you made this bag bigger, we do have other sizes available. This isn't as much of a factor because it's higher up, but that is what they look like. The gift bags and gift tags will be available on my Etsy shop. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's project and will be turning tons of your scraps into perfect gift bags for your friends and family. Have a great day. Goodbye.